Welcome to another episode of OG55. I am joined by the one, the only, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, Mr. Webba, host of Web Shots and Webba Vision here on OG55. Today we're talking all about Tomorrowland. When are we actually going to get a new Tomorrowland, a reimagined Tomorrowland at Disneyland realistically? And what could we expect? What IP could possibly be put into this new land? We got two Californians here talking about California. Here we go. Up next on OG55.
I ain't got nothing to say but West Side.
Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. Today, we're talking all about Disneyland in Anaheim, our Tomorrowland. When can we realistically expect this area to see some TLC? Mr. Webba, welcome back on the show, sir.
OG, thank you so much for having me on. You know, it's been only like 5 minutes since we last talked. So.
Yeah, exactly. Literally 5 minutes, exactly. Where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Absolutely, you can find me on Twitter, which is going to be Mr. Webba at Webslinger760. Also, Threads and Instagram, Mr. Webba at Cobweb. Sorry, God, I can't even talk. Mr. Webba at Cobweb91. You can also find me here on OG55 with the help of this guy, the new series Web Shots and Webba Vision. So stay tuned for those. And yeah, I'm happy to be here again on OG55.
Perfect. All right, let's dive right into our topic at hand, which is Tomorrowland. So we have a lot of stuff on the books at the Disneyland Resort, especially DCA, which I think is the right move, actually. DCA is the park that needs the most love. So we're getting the Coco boat ride. We're getting a massive, Pandora. We're getting, the two Avengers rides. We're also getting the 70th anniversary stuff coming up this year. So we got a lot on our plate. Right. So realistically, Webba, when do you think we could see a, Disney kind of focusing on Tomorrowland? I mean, do you see this happening in the next 5 years? Do you think there's too much on their plate right now? Do you think it's more like in 10 years? What's the timeline for you?
I would say sometime between the 75th and the 80th.
Okay.
I say that because now when I say this, I have no indication from anything or anyone that this is the case. So this is just Mr. Webba's speculation here, right? So because within 5 years, right, at least at Disneyland and really all the other parks that Daddy Josh mentioned, all these projects should be done within 5 years, right? It's 2025 right now. In 5 years, it's going to be 2030, right? So in 5 years, it's also going to be the 75th. So I'm thinking, even if we don't have a Tomorrowland redo by that time, which we're not going to, obviously, I think what we will get is possibly a announcement at a D23 on the 75th. If that D23 concurs on that, I think it's the 74th D23 is. But either way, I think we'll get an announcement around that time, and then at least by the 80th, we will have a new Tomorrowland.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that right now the 5-year plan is the 5-year plan. So what we're seeing with DCA right now is pretty much what they want to focus on, right? Mm-hmm. So that takes us, like you were saying, Webba, to 2030, right? Yeah. So we don't have another expo until 2026. Like 2026, we're not really even close to being done with this 5-year plan yet. Like Coco, Tomorrow said that Coco doesn't even start until 2026. So that's not going to be done by the next expo for sure. Pandora sure as hell ain't going to be done by the next expo. The Avengers attractions will be well into the process, right? Dirt moving. It's already moving now. well into the process. But most of the projects for this 5-year plan are not going to be completed by the next expo. So I would agree with you. It won't be the 2026 expo. It'll be the 2028 expo that I think a lot of these a lot of these new projects for the next 5 years will be announced. So 2024, 2026, and then the 2028 expo, right, will be the one that we could expect it. So that's in what? That's in 3 years, 2028?
Yeah.
In 3 years. So
yeah.
So 3 years, that would bring it to the 73rd anniversary. So that really does kind of coordinate with what you were saying, right? You think that we'll get a new Tomorrowland between the 75th and the 80th. And I would concur, you know?
Yeah, and that's because if you think about it, these projects take a long time, and they come like in a like the studio, right? The movies, they're in a pipeline. So it takes multiple years for stuff to get through different aspects of that project. So I think at least by the 75th, we'll have an announcement of the Tomorrowland, because now DCA is pretty much done, right? Oh, and also not only DCA, but also the Eastern Gateway. We can't forget about that either. So so apparently that's supposed to be done within the 5-year time span too. So I think once they have all those projects done, then they're like, okay, DCA is good right now. Let's go back and focus on the one big sore eye in Disneyland, which is Tomorrowland. Now, however, OG, I do agree with you, because even though Tomorrowland is by far the weakest land in Disneyland, I do think it still warrants enough foot traffic that it can still survive, right? So when you go in there, it's always crowded in Tomorrowland. Now, granted, like the infrastructure there, like the way it's designed, is not really well done for foot traffic. But even still, like, you can feel the crowds in there, definitely. But here's the thing: like you said, right? You have your OCD thing about the Star Tours being there, but we have Galaxy's Edge. So that's another problem, right? So here's the thing: I love Star Tours. I actually like Star Tours more than Smuggler's Run. Okay. We have Space Mountain, which is fantastic, and I love Hyperspace Mountain. But then, okay, what do you got? The launch bay with the DVC thing, right? And then we got a useless, well, I won't say useless, but a not used people mover track anymore. We have Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blaster, okay? And then we have Autopia.
Did you say Astro Blaster? Watch your mouth, young man. Watch your mouth. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So again, like, these attractions, they pull people. People go on them, so it's a busy land for sure. But like what you were saying before, OG, it's not in such a disarray where nobody goes there. Yeah. Right.
The attractions themselves still do numbers for sure. Right. They do numbers, like you were saying, Space Mountain, Star Tours, Astro Blasters, even Autopia. I mean, a lot of families still like to go on that. Nemo Subs always has a line. I know that Nemo Subs has a capacity issue, which contributes to the long line, but overall it's still popular with families and the normies. So Tomorrowland, to your point, Webba, does not have necessarily a substance problem. It has a aesthetic issue. Like, and there are some substance issues, like, the launch bay is kind of right, and the people mover track being empty, no attraction there. There are some substance issues in it, but by and large, the land has a lot of very popular attractions still. So what is Disney's incentive to start going in there, start bulldozing shit, when the normies are still flocking to this land in droves?
Well, I'll tell you this: but their incentive now is to look at Tokyo Disneyland's, what they're going to do, and be like, oh my god, that looks amazing.
Well, yeah, exactly. And see, that's the thing. Tokyo will absolutely blow our minds, and they're actually bulldozing their entire Space Mountain and rebuilding it. So this thing is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, come on, it's Japanese; they do everything better than us. So
of course. Now, what I will say though, however, OG, is that here's the thing: the rides in Tomorrowland. Okay, take out Space Mountain. The rides in Tomorrowland themselves aren't bad per se. However, I will say they're not good for Tomorrowland. Besides Space Mountain Star Tours, everything else, I don't think it really fits Tomorrowland in a modern Tomorrowland era. So, like, take Buzz Lightyear's Astral Blaster out. Take that thing out. I don't know why it's there. Yes, it's Buzz Lightyear in space and whatever, but we already have a shooter right in DCA that's a lot better, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, and also too, we have Autopia. I get it. Everybody loves Autopia, right? My issue with Autopia is it takes up so much real estate there that I'm sorry. You could put something way grander and better than Autopia in there.
Well,
and I think they should.
No, I agree with you, Webba. I agree with you. I was saying if you're going to bring Avatar to Disneyland Resort, I was saying now it's too late now, obviously, you know, but I was saying if you get rid of Autopia and you get rid of the submarine voyage and the motorboat area, that plot of land. Now, obviously, you would have to deal with the Spaghetti Bowl monorail track and all that. Okay, so this is expensive. Like OG is asking Disney to pull out their checkbook for sure. You know what I'm saying? So you know, you're gonna have to spend some moolah to make some moolah. But if you take out those attractions, Autopia, motorboat cruise, or the former motorboat cruise area, and the lagoon, right? You open up a huge swath of land, right? And then you can reroute the monorail. But Pandora would have fit perfectly in there because Pandora is a perfect blend of fantasy and like futurism. Tomorrow, exactly. So you can have like the futuristic, like I know in Florida, in their Pandora, they have like these mech robot suits, like, you know, standing around. You can have that more of the technology side of Pandora on the Tomorrowland side. And you can have more of the natural beauty, like whimsy with the waterfalls and the rock work on the Fantasyland side. And it would be that perfect segue between Tomorrow and Fantasy, I think. You know, that would have been my ideal spot because also you're getting rid of the submarine lagoon. But here's the thing. A lot of fans were concerned about losing the lagoon, not because the ride is amazing, but they don't want to lose the aesthetics of the water. But you're putting if you can put a fucking Pandora there, you're not losing any aesthetics. You're gaining aesthetics, if anything. So you don't lose the aesthetics. It's a perfect fit right there in between those two lands that kind of cradles both themes perfectly. That's the way to go. But obviously that's not going to happen, you know. But you know, we'll kind of see. I mean, it's interesting because that area, I agree with you. Autopia is a huge waste of space. I understand California law kicks in, and they have to convert these cars to electric. I get it, and they've made a whole big thing on the news about how they're going to do that. So Autopia is not going away anytime soon. I really wish it would, though. I really wish they would just get rid of it. There's a lot of land. You know, it used to be two Autopias. It was the Fantasyland Autopia and the Tomorrowland Autopia, and they combined them years ago in this one mega Autopia. And it's just, maybe they can, you know, maybe they can just maybe shorten it a little bit, like even not get rid of it, but shorten it, because it just takes up so much space for an outdated kind of concept.
Nah, just get rid of it.
Yeah, get rid of it. Just bulldoze it. Come on, just bulldoze it. Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
Now also, I want to say too, I wish Disney would do something with the theater. That's right, like under the Space Mountain queue there, that 3D theater.
Yeah, the old Captain EO thing.
Yes. I also have like really great memories with Honey, I Shrunk the Audience with that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like, okay, I'm a person, OG, who doesn't like wasted space, or if you're not using something, take it out. That's the type of person I am. And it just bothers me. Like, and you say, I don't have OCD, but that bothers me. Something like the People Mover track in the 3D theater not being used, and it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Wasting away. And it's like, can we do something with this? Like, I know you guys can put something cool here in this here. Let's do it. Let's put some butts in the seats. And because that's another thing, OG, is like that if you're not using that or the People Mover, that's more people in the park. If you have those operating, you can have people, the capacity filled up more with people in those lines and in the attraction.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's bad show to have these attractions like sitting there empty. So the theater, the People Mover track is really bad show. I mean, you can see it from the monorail load area station. A lot of it's rusted away, you know, and it's really, really bad show. If you're not going to do anything with it, then just bulldoze that track. You know, it's really bad to leave it there. I mean, personally, in an ideal world, if it was up to me, which contrary to contrary to popular belief, I get no special access, so it's not up to me. But if it was up to me, if it was up to OG, I would just spend the money, bulldoze the whole freaking land, except for Space Mountain, and let's give us a real new Tomorrowland. New attractions, new aesthetics, and really give us a new layout. The problem with the current thing is that they've taken the 1960s Tomorrowland and they've repurposed and repainted that thing like 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's become lost in translation now. I think it's time to start fresh, new buildings, new layout. Let's get this done, you know? And actually, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll do my thought after you
well, I was going to say and we're going to talk about it because Fantastic Four is in the news right now because of the teaser trailer and all that stuff coming. But like, I think that's a perfect franchise to put into Tomorrowland. You know, I know that DCA has a lot of the Marvel stuff, but I think this particular franchise with the aesthetics that Feige was going for, with that kind of like that 1960s kind of future retro vibe, it would be the perfect e-ticket attraction to put into any new Tomorrowland, in my opinion. Now, if this movie does a lot of money, which I think it will, I think it's promising. We might get that. You know, you can fit it too. I mean, if you get rid of Launch Bay, you can fit something over there. You know, some big e-ticket over there. So we'll see. I mean, you can even get rid of Launch Bay, and if you want to get rid of the pizza port, you know, that whole stretch right there, you can have a nice Fantastic Four mid-century future kind of attraction. But we'll see what they do. Go ahead, Webba.
Well, before I get to my thing, I wanted to ask you, should we have show a little Fantastic Four or something and talk about it?
Yeah, let's do that. I like that idea, brother. Let's go ahead and we're going to play this. This is actually the teaser from at the time of this recording, the teaser to the teaser, the teaser to the teaser for Fantastic Four. So we're going to play it while we talk about it. So here we go, Webba. That's a great idea. And go ahead, brother.
Here we go. We got some kids running here, and already I love the era, right? The timeline.
Yeah, it's that space race, 1960s kind of energy, but it still has that timeless sort of futurism to it. You know, this era, it feels very futuristic still, even though it was years and years and years ago. You know.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? Just look at the TVs back in the day. Back in that day, you know, there was really a visionary mindset of the future of what stuff would look like. So when things were being built, they were kind of being built in mind with like what something in the future would kind of look like with the current technology at the time, right? And I think into Tomorrowland, I think that's what's missing. I think what's missing, like at least aesthetically, is something where with our current technology, building something that we foresee stuff, objects, structures looking like in the far future. Because remember, like let's say Back to the Future, 2015. Oh my God, that's so far in the future. We're flying cars and hoverboards. Well, we're still here with cars on the ground. You know what I mean?
So. And I love that kind of stuff. And that was one of the when I was a kid, bro. Like when I saw that movie in theaters with my buddy Dominic. By the way, Dominic, shout out to Dominic. This kid, we were kids. We were probably like maybe, well, when that movie came out, like 1990 or something. We were probably like 10 or 11 or something ish. But this kid was already like 6 foot. Tall.
Yeah.
Dom was a big dude. It was pretty funny. But anyway, I remember going to the theater watching Back to the Future Part 2 and being blown away with this vision of the future with these hoverboards and the shoes that like they would tie themselves. They would like, you know, whoosh, right around
his shoes, bro.
Yes, exactly. That made like my imagination go wild with the possibilities of the future and what have you. It was exciting. And I think we've lost a lot of that as the decades went on. We don't really have that same sort of vision right now for the future, that same kind of optimism, right? Yeah. One thing that I do, look, I'm not a big Elon Musk fan. I'm not a huge fan of what he's done with like X. I think he's absolutely destroyed that app to the point where really I don't even go on it anymore. It's just I don't even really use it. I use it to DM you guys occasionally, but that's it. I don't really care for the guy, but I will say this: he is still of our current day one of the more visionary people for things like this. Like when he announced his like taxi thing or whatever, like it looked like this really futuristic like driverless. It was weird. It was like it looked like something from like the 40s. But like it was like but also from the future. It was kind of this weird like thing, right?
Hybrid, right?
Yeah, like because it had like a 1930s, 1940s aesthetic to it, like kind of like the Art Deco vibe, but it was driverless and very futuristic at the same time, and I like that. So to Elon's credit, look, I'm not like a black or white kind of guy. I can admit like I don't like somebody or I don't agree with them all the time, but I can also admit like the positives of that person. And I think Elon is a forward thinker. He absolutely is. So he's one of the few right now that are kind of doing that. But by and large, we don't have that kind of vision right now in our society. It's really, really sad to kind of watch. But back then they did. They did. People like Walt Disney and a lot of people back then they had much more of an optimistic view of the future and everything. It was very, very interesting. But let's continue with this. Yeah. So, there we go. So this is just a teaser. So there's not. There we go. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. So we'll see. We'll watch tomorrow when it launches. We'll probably do like a full review or the reaction to the whole thing. But I think Fantastic Four is a great option for Tomorrowland. If you really want to top to bottom sort of reimagine this thing, that's a franchise. I think it would go perfect in there because right now there's not a whole lot of options. Really for Tomorrowland. I mean, you can put another Star Wars thing in there if you want, but I don't know. I think Fantastic Four is the best bet you got right now.
Well, I want to kind of lead from that into this. So I would agree that Fantastic Four would fit Tomorrowland, but only if you do that aesthetic. If you don't do that aesthetic, I think it'll feel or look kind of out of place. Now, this is where I want to jump into IP stuff, right? Because we all know, Papa Iger's like, I love the IPs. I want the IP lands. Let's go, right?
All right.
Here's the thing, though. Tomorrowland is a different beast, right? So Tomorrowland is like the future, right? And there's not a lot of, I mean, yes, we do have some Disney movies like,
like
WALL-E.
Yeah,
that Flight of the Navigator, stuff like that. Because I remember George was asked a question about that on an earlier show. But we have to find a movie or an IP that's really going to draw the audience in, right?
Right.
However, I want to ask you, OG, what do you think about this? If Disney can't get a Disney IP, right, from the studio to the park, right? Because that's how this train functions, right? Yep. Studio, park. What if instead Imagineering tried to do not the reverse, but kind of the reverse? If for the first time in a long time, really, right, you create your own story and character IPs for Tomorrowland. Because that way you come up with a fresh new story in the park that fits, that would, you come up with a story. Okay, now what type of ride system can we create? This is, I don't know, character Stella or something. I don't know, right? I have, a certain ride with characters that are named after stars or something like that, right? What kind of imaginary futuristic adventure do you want to take the guests on, right? And I think they could probably either go that route, or if Disney wants to be even more like bullish, OG, right? For the first time ever, Disney not using their own in-house IP.
Yes, that's an option. Go ahead. I'll let you finish, brother.
Yeah, for the first time, get a license to use other IP pertaining to Tomorrowland ideas or space aesthetics.
Yes. And they actually have done that before, which is interesting, but it was actually Star Tours, because they didn't own Lucasfilm back then. True. So it was licensed, and also Captain EO was not a Disney, technically not. It was they worked with Francis Ford Coppola on that one and stuff. So at that time, Disney, they didn't have a lot of in-house IP back then. The studio was really, really struggling in like those late 70s, early 80s. So they were having to license stuff out because Star Wars was way more relevant than anything Disney was making at the time. But to your point, though, you're right. I mean, they haven't really, it's not unusual for Disney to license out IP or to bring in outside IP, right? We saw it with Star Tours initially. We saw it with Indiana Jones. That was not Disney either in 95, right? We even saw it kind of recently with Pandora, because Pandora was in Animal Kingdom long before they bought Fox, right?
Right.
And Pixar was not Disney until they bought it, like in 2006, I think it was. So they've done it before. So if there's an IP out there that's really hitting and works really well with Tomorrowland, and it's an outsider IP, I'm open to it. I'm open to exceptions. Now, I would prefer if Disney keeps it in-house, just because in-house has a lot less issues, like in terms of like relationship strain. Sometimes you can have some issues with that. Like with Pixar, there was some fighting with Pixar and Michael Eisner and a whole bunch of stuff. So you can have squabbles, you know, but if they don't really have anything that they can put in there that's going to really hit with the normies, they can find another company's IP that will hit harder, and they can have a great idea for it. I'm open to hearing about it. You know, right now the best in-house IP for them, I think, would be Fantastic Four. I mean, technically, you can do a big Hero 6 thing, even though they have it over there in DCA. You can also do Wall-E. I don't know how big Wall-E is though in terms of the normies, if they're really like if that's a big draw or not. But I mean, you can do Iron Man, I guess. I mean, but it's tough. It's tough. It's tough to find these IP for Tomorrowland, which is why I think also another reason why Disney's not really like gung-ho with Tomorrowland. Because think about it. With the Disneyland Forward stuff, with like DCA or like, you know, the expansion plot for Disneyland, they can pull from big IP. So, for example, Frozen. I mean, any expansion of Disneyland will probably include Frozen. That's a mega franchise, $1 billion franchise, right? Even if you look over at DCA, you know, you have Coco, Avengers, Avatar. Like these are huge IP, so they're focusing on those. In Tomorrowland, though, it's a little harder with that because a lot of the themes and the IPs that would go into that land are smaller things. So like a Big Hero 6, a Wall-E, a Meet the Robinsons. It's a smaller in-house thing, right? I mean, technically, you could maybe do an Avatar attraction, and you can, you know, like you're gonna have Pandora over at Disneyland. I mean, over at DCA, and maybe put like a standalone Avatar ride in Tomorrowland. That's an option, but
it is OG. Sorry to cut you off, but then if they do that, then we're kind of going back to the same argument that we have with Buzz Lightyear. They have a Toy Story attraction over there. Why do we have one like over here? It's you know what I mean? So I mean, I'm here saying there's nothing wrong with using, you know, like an IP for both parks. However, when one is clearly better than the other, I think that's a problem. You know, at least have both of them be on the same type of caliber, right? you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, and that's why I brought up the fact that if Disney doesn't want to use outside IP, and if they can't figure out anything because they have smaller IPs that probably just won't work in Tomorrowland, why can't they just, the Imagineers, sit together and come up with, hey, let's create in-house park IP.
Well, that's a great idea, and you can also, and it's risky, but you know what? Disney was built on risks, so it's good to take risks, and they should take more risks. So if they build their own, if they create their own in-house IP, you have some of the most brilliant minds in Hollywood working at Disney, with everyone at Pixar, everyone at Marvel, everyone at Fox, Disney. You have all these great creative minds. You can pull from those amazing studios and create an in-park original IP if they really wanted to, and it would probably be a banger. You know, you have to do it right, obviously. Now it's risky. It's risky, you know, because your attractions are a little bit more, they're not permanent. Like everything can always be bulldozed or rethemed, but it's a little bit harder. Like for example, with a movie, you put a movie out there, right? Like Solo, a Star Wars story, it flops and that's the end of it. but if you make an original IP in the parks and then it flops, now you have this attraction and it's a physical thing that you have to take care of now, you know? So it's a big risk for them, but I think there's a big risk, but there's also a bigger payoff as well.
Right. And that's where I think with the bigger risk, they need to make sure that what they come out is with a banger. You cannot be cutting budgets on this thing. I mean, you always have budget cuts, but it cannot be a significant amount where it's like, this is going to affect the quality of what we imagine this to be. Right? because otherwise you're sacrificing character, sacrificing story, sacrificing ride mechanics. Because here's the thing, right? Like I've always said, if you take an IP that no one really cares about or they don't love, you know, and you say, oh, they should make a ride of this, people go, no, I don't want that. At least in my opinion, if you make a badass attraction, people are going to love it. Like, okay, here's the thing: people are sick. People like the fandom are sick of Star Wars, Marvel because the quality has dipped a lot, right? Now, granted, these are well-known IP. However, I think that if they make awesome attractions like Rise of the Resistance, where people hate the sequel trilogy, people are going to forgive that and still make 100 and something minute wait in line.
It's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, one of the biggest flops in Hollywood, like literally, like this movie was known. This movie was actually famous because of how much of a flop it was, which is Waterworld.
Yeah.
Waterworld was a massive flop at the box office, but it's also one of the most popular stunt shows in theme park history. It's a great show. It's still running and going strong today at Universal Studios Hollywood. So you have a really weak IP, but it's still going strong because the product in the park is so amazing. To your point with the sequel trilogy, a lot of people don't like the sequel trilogy. They don't like that Raylo stuff. You know what I'm saying? They don't like Raylo, but that attraction is so dope. It kind of transcends people's opinions of the ride. I mean, I'm not really a Cars fan, like in terms of the movies.
Yeah,
they're okay. They're cute. Mater's cool. Mater's a homie, but like, I'm not a big Cars fan, but I mean, it's one of my favorite lands at the resort. I love Cars Land. I love Radiator Springs Racers. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, if you create the right product, it almost doesn't even matter, So
yeah, exactly. And so, OG, I actually want to ask you about this, bro.
Sure.
If and when they do, when they eventually get to Tomorrowland, because we all know they will at some points.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, I'm 100% positive that Imagineers already know Tomorrowland's a problem. I'm sure they know over this already, and I'm sure they talk about it. I'm sure they get ideas passed around or whatnot, right? I'm sure they're very well aware of this and fans' criticisms of Tomorrowland. However, when they do start to work on Tomorrowland, though, how do you think they should go about it? Do you think they should totally block off all of Tomorrowland, kind of like what they did with Critter Country, and just like block everything off, demo everything, and then just rebuild from the ground up? Or do you think they should do it section by section?
I think in Critter Country was small enough and only affected 2 attractions, Blue and Splash, right?
Well, and also the restaurant too, but
and the restaurant, yeah. So Critter Country was a pretty small entity. It's also at the back end of the park, kind of separated from a lot of the park, really, kind of, right? Yeah. So I think closing it off worked for Critter Country. Tomorrowland is a major area, like we said earlier on in the show. Like those attractions still do numbers, like Space Mountain, Astro Blasters, Autopia, Star Tours. Like they do numbers. So if you're going to do an all new Tomorrowland, I think you have to do it in phases. You cut off maybe half of it, bulldoze, rebuild, and then you do the other half. Kind of like what they did with Epcot. Like it was like done like in sections. I know that wasn't the most popular reimagining. I don't want to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth, but the way they handled that, where they sort of worked one area, the other area, like I think that's kind of how you address Tomorrowland. I don't think you can keep Tomorrowland, the entire thing, shut down for 3 and 4 years. I just don't think that's feasible.
Yeah, no, and I agree, because they said it's a big area, and at least if you have some parts of it open while other parts are being worked on, you I guess won't be as pissed off. Because here's the other thing too, right? OG, in 5 years, what are the prices going to be like for Disneyland or the Disneyland Resort as a whole? For parking, for food, for merch, for annual passes? What are the prices going to be like by the time they even talk about redoing Tomorrowland?
Yes. Now here is a caveat, though, right? You're right about the prices, because I think we're going to hit the 2,000 mark for that top Magic Key very soon. I think pretty soon. But here's the other thing too. We have Disneyland Forward, right?
Yeah.
We have Disneyland Forward. So technically, if we wait longer than the 5 years, let's just say, because we don't have anything right now for Disneyland in connection to Disneyland Forward. Okay.
Right.
But let's just say they do a Disneyland expansion before Tomorrowland. Let's just say they put in some 10, 15 acre expansion for Disneyland using the expansion, that we have now from Disneyland forward. If they can do that and open that, you might theoretically be able to shut down Tomorrowland, because now you just expanded Disneyland by another 15 acres, 10, 15 acres, whatever they decide to do. That on top of the fact that you just added 15 acres with Galaxy's Edge just 5 or 6 years ago. So you have a pretty big theme park now. I mean, it's already pretty sizable, but if you add one more land, you could theoretically, you could probably close Tomorrowland all at once and be able to do that.
Because you're right. Because it's like you never lost a land in the first place.
You never lost it because you're opening up the new land. Let's just say hypothetical, they do Frozen Land or Fantasy Springs, and that's the expansion for Disneyland.
Yeah,
they open that up. Well, now you can theoretically shut down Tomorrowland, because now you're shutting one land down, but you opened up this new land over here. So capacity might take a hit, because I don't think any new land will have as much going on at Tomorrowland, but it would be very much minimized and mitigated because you're offsetting it with an all new land. And we just got, like I said, Galaxy's Edge a few years ago. I mean, it's pretty new still. So you could theoretically kind of get away with it, but I think the best bet, though, still, regardless, I think ideally, is a phased closure thing. I think that's the best way to kind of go about it.
Okay, so
I mean, what do you think, though? I mean, you think that would be for you? I mean, would that work, or do you think they should just shut it
down? Personally, I would rather, so let me put it this way. Take out Galaxy's Edge, right? I mean, honestly, if I never knew Galaxy's Edge was a thing, I still would have been fine with Disneyland with how it is. Yeah. you know what I mean? So I would have personally would want them to do Tomorrowland first and then tack on a new land. Because what I want to happen is fix the shit that is like not right with the current park.
Right.
Then when everything's pretty and perfect, now start expanding on.
Yeah.
And
that's a fair point.
Here's the thing, OG. That's a problem I have with Walt Disney World, right? There's a lot of stuff that is just like kind of mid or like and then they're like expanding on stuff. It's like, well, no, shut it down. Well, that's what they're doing with like the Dino stuff, which is fantastic. But I want them to focus on making everything perfect in Disneyland first, and then expand out the new stuff.
Yeah, work on your current stuff. You're right. Work on the current stuff, and then now you can start to look beyond the park boundaries and kind of expand out. And you're right too. That's another issue with if you wait until you build a new land with the expansion pad, you're extending this Tomorrowland thing out 10, 15 years or more. I mean, you're really kicking that can down the road, and we really do need a new Tomorrowland sooner than that. I mean, it really should be whatever the next 5 years is after this current 5-year plan. It really should be included in that next 5 years.
I agree. Now, OG, here's my other question for you, bro. Right? So you mentioned Fantastic Four going into Tomorrowland.
Right.
Now, I was just saying that I agree with that if you have the aesthetics and the kind of image for Tomorrowland based around Fantastic Four, right? Like that type of era. However, for a redone Tomorrowland, would you want it to look, which I know you'll probably say no, like the Tokyo version they're getting, or like the Fantastic Four version, like or the Fantastic Four style? And how would you want each attraction to be like about what? Do you want it to be about like scientific discovery adventures, or like how would you want that presented in the park?
Okay, so I prefer that mid-century look for Disneyland. That retro future look for Disneyland. I want it new. I don't want the same buildings that we've had since the 60s, but I want to go in that Fantastic Four direction aesthetically. That's my ideal for Disneyland. I think it works really well for Disneyland. In terms of the attractions, this is kind of how I feel. I think that the land needs to be cohesive aesthetically, but I don't feel like the attractions necessarily have to lean into retro future. So I think you could have, for example, Star Tours, right? Let's just say that, for example, that we get a whole new Tomorrowland. It's the aesthetics is like that Fantastic Four mid-century future. I think that you obviously have the facade and the outside of the building for Star Tours look like that retro future, but I think that when you walk into Star Tours, it's very much Star Wars. Like, I think that the outsides should be very cohesive, but once you're walking into each attraction, it's okay for each attraction to sort of have its own flavor. So I don't think they all have to be like this retro future vibe once you get in there. So, but the outside though is what needs to be cohesive. Like, you can't have Star Tours looking one way, and then you have Space Mountain looking in one way, and then you have Astro Blasters looking one way. All the buildings and all the architecture and all the stuff for the land needs to look like one cohesive piece. But once you go into those show buildings, it's okay to deviate from that. That's how, I mean, and this is subjective. That's just for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. See, because what's funny is like that. If you look at our Space Mountains like show building, and then you look at the rest of the buildings in Tomorrowland, it does not match aesthetically at all. It's like, oh, this is awesome. Look at this cool futuristic like thing. What the hell is that? You know, it's just like, it does not match at all.
Well, it's a weird hodgepodge in Tomorrowland right now, because you go over to Pizza Port and it's got like this weird funky red and purple whatever it is signage, right? It's like hideous, absolutely freaking hideous. And then right next to it is this launch bay monstrosity, which has like this weird kind of like, I don't even know what, man. It's not like retro future. It's like this weird cement monstrosity. I don't know. It's pretty ugly. Nothing really matches. And then the front of the land has like that 1960s kind of architecture from like, from the old Tomorrowland, but they just repainted it like 30 times.
Yeah.
And then they've added like metal pieces and accents to it over the years. It's like every Tomorrowland since that 60s era sort of has like their fingerprint on this Tomorrowland. And it's really a hodgepodge now of like just various eras of the land. That's why I think they really need to just gut it and rebuild it. We need a whole new layout, a whole new land, new architecture, new everything. We can't just keep repurposing these same buildings over and over again, really clean house here. So I hope whenever they do Tomorrowland, Disney, you have to spend the money to do it right. You have to spend the money, really, really go in there and give everyone a new Tomorrowland. You just can't. The '98 Tomorrowland was a total joke, and the cheap comes out expensive when you do that. Look what happened with '98 Tomorrowland. All they did was repaint everything copper and like rusted green, and and they cheaped out on rocket rods. They cheaped out on all that shit, and then they have to end up. Then the thing was outdated or like a failure, like almost immediately out the gate, and now you have to go back and do it again. Spend the money, Disney. Spend $1 billion, even $2 billion if you need to, on not $2 billion. I don't want to get crazy, but like if you spend like $1 billion or a little more than $1 billion, like maybe like even like a 1.5 on a really cool Tomorrowland, I think you're in good shape there. I really do.
So, OG, I'm glad you brought up like the funding for this, right? Because something like Tomorrowland needs a lot of funding, in my opinion, because you're talking about like the future, right? Tomorrow, right? What's tomorrow? And tomorrow for us, okay, here's the thing. People always say Star Wars. Oh, well, that's not futuristic because that's in a galaxy far, far away. Yes, but for us in our society, lightsabers, starships, all that is the future for us, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, and then like even with Star Trek, teleportation, that's all futuristic for us. And so what I would like to see is, can we get stuff like attractions that have a cool adventure of like what it would be like to be someone in the future, right? Like 5,000, 10,000 years from now, right? With like teleportation, invisibility, lasers and stuff like that, right? And like a lot of that, Imagineers can find tricks and stuff like that to do all that stuff now. And I was this in Adventureland? I'm not Adventureland. Tomorrowland, Adventures Through Inner Space.
Yeah, that's where Star Tours is right now.
Yeah, so I never went on it, but it sounded like a kind of a cool idea. I don't know if it was fun or not, but I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So I remember Star Tours used to be a sponsored, right? And this is why I bring up the budget, the finances, because Disney used to have sponsorships. Yeah. So if Disney, if they're so worried about the money, why can't they go back to having sponsorships again, especially for Tomorrowland? Like, I really think Tomorrowland, you need to have a big budget for this to do it right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And Disney has really good relationships with some of these tech companies. Bob Iger was on the board at Apple for years. He only stepped down because it was a conflict of interest. He had to step down when they launched Disney Plus, because Apple had their own streaming service. So legally he couldn't be on their board because it was a conflict of interest at that point, right? But he was on their board for years. He's friends with Tim Cook. Why don't you reach out to Apple, Disney? Why don't you have them sponsor a new People Mover?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're like, these two companies are friends. I mean, every 3 or 4 years, that rumor goes around. It's like a cyclical thing that Apple is going to buy Disney. You know, those rumors are out there because, you know, they have that relationship. You know what I'm saying? They have that relationship. So Apple would be perfect for this. Tesla, I mean, that is a forward-looking company, but I don't think that would be a good option just because he's a very controversial figure right now. I just don't think. I mean, he does cool technological work and all that stuff. I'm not going to put him down for that because I do like that about him.
Yeah, me too.
You know, SpaceX, all that stuff is dope, dude. I really like that stuff, but he's too much of a hot button. Like, I just think he's, you know, so it's probably not the best decision. Disney needs to keep it low key right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of don't get too crazy with that because you don't want to have. Disney has had enough negative attention right now the past few years. So, but Apple would be a great option. And there's all these other tech companies that you can utilize to sponsor these attractions. You lean on that, Disney. Why not?
Yeah, or also too, if you want to make it feel a little bit old school, or make it feel more futuristic, is can NASA sponsor them?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
You know,
yeah, that'd be interesting.
Because if you don't want to use SpaceX because of Elon Musk, I'm sure there's other private space investors and stuff like that. I just don't know the names, but NASA's a big one. Look to the stars, like Space Mountain and Star Tours, right? They're all in space. If you want to have something cool with like new space technology involved in the park somehow, you can do that. Again, we have the Apple Vision. Was it Apple Vision Pro? That was for like the TV thing. Like you said, partner with Apple on some cool high tech stuff that you can include into the rides itself. There's a lot of things they can do. They just got to get the budget for it. And then I think really what they should do, honestly, in my opinion, is create new IP for the land, like for the park.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're stuck trying to figure out what IP to pull from, how you're going to make it work in the park. And then you're also stuck with, well, I don't want to, use third-party characters or IP. So then what do? Well, create new characters for the park.
Yeah.
It's risky for sure, but
enlist your studio, enlist the creatives at your studios, right? They have like some of the most creative people working at Disney. Like I said, whether it's Marvel, Pixar, whatever, Lucasfilm, and have them come up with a cool story, a cool story for the land, But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options here, and I think that the sponsorship thing is something they should definitely look at. Any of these tech giants would probably do it, I'm sure. And it's like a drop in the bucket for those companies. I mean. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, and you can it doesn't even have to be a tech company. I mean, you can even do like car companies, right? Like, they've done that before. They've done car companies. You can do, Samsung, stuff like that, or Sony. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that would fit like that Tomorrowland sort of like vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's options out there, but I think, to kind of wrap this up into a nice neat little package, I do think I would agree with you. I think we're looking at the next, not this 5-year plan, the next one. So by the end of the decade, so by the end of like 2035, we'll probably have a new Tomorrowland by then, or at least the process has been in motion, hopefully. But
I hope so.
I hope so by then, but by the end of the decade is kind of where my head's at. I feel like this. Look, the Imagineering story on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
we had, I forgot what episode it was, but they showed video of Joe Rohde looking at the Disneyland Tomorrowland model and he lifted up Launch Bay off the model and was like looking at it, trying to figure things out. Like they have plans. They've made these discussions. They've had these discussions at Imagineering.
Well, OG, of course they have. You know why? Because these same Imagineers are the ones who are going to be redoing all of Tomorrowland in Japan.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You know?
That's very, very true. Yeah, a lot
You know?
of stuff that they're doing over there might have been stuff that they were thinking about doing over here. You know, so so I think that they definitely have ideas and everything, and I think that hopefully, by the end of the decade, we see those ideas implemented. So we'll see. But it's fascinating. Everyone loves Tomorrowland. It's one of those things where it's like people really want this to. We've been itching for it. We've been thirsty for a new Tomorrowland for years and years and years.
Right. Well, because this is the thing, it's like that. You never really hear about people complaining about, any other part of the park. Well, maybe besides Toontown, but now that one's fantastic. Right. So, people don't complain about Fantasyland, New Orleans, Frontierland. I mean, it's weird because even with Frontierland, there's not really like much there in Frontierland. You have Thunder Mountain, you have the shooting gallery, the restaurant, and then you have like the saloon and the little shops. But it's not like Frontierland's a huge land.
No.
Like I think even Adventureland has more stuff than Frontierland does, and that's a smaller land.
Oh, it's very small. And you have Jungle Cruise, Indiana Jones, Tiki Room. You have the thing with Adventureland, it's a small land, but it packs a punch, bro. Like you have the Treehouse, Indiana Jones, Jungle Cruise, and Tiki Room.
Yep. And then you have 2 restaurants and a shop.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge, So Frontierland only has a couple shops, the Golden Horseshoe, Big Thunder,
and the arcade.
That's it. Yeah. Not much there, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, we get some answers at like some of these upcoming D23 events about Disneyland's Tomorrowland. I'm telling you, Josh, tomorrow, if you ever watched this video by chance, that is the easiest win you can have on your watch, is to announce a new Tomorrowland at Disneyland. The fans will go absolutely bonkers for that, dude.
Now, OG, I want to ask you. Okay, I want to ask you this because I think this is pretty important here, right? A 30-year plan for Disneyland Forward, right? Because you brought up earlier Disneyland expansion or having to expand a new land while Tomorrowland was closed. And I was talking about, no, do Tomorrowland first and then expand, right? Do you think after those two things happen, we have a redone Tomorrowland, we have a new addition onto Disneyland, then they focus on a third park?
Yes, I think that would be the time. I think if you fix Tomorrowland, it's looking good now. It's chugging along. You have a Disneyland expansion into like the I think it's Lilo and Stitch parking lot, if I'm not mistaken. You have a Disneyland expansion into there. DCA is up and running with Pandora and Coco and this, that, and the other, right? Yeah, you could make the argument it's time for a third park, baby. Let's do it. Let's go into that Toy Story lot, and we would have the parking structure from the Eastern Gateway by then already, right? So now they probably would have to build another structure though, because you're getting rid of Toy Story, right?
Right.
But they can make that happen, dude. I mean, it's not too hard to find like 5 acres to build a new structure, or even add to current ones or whatever. So they can make it happen. But yeah, I think after that, I think then you can really start talking seriously about a third park. Yeah,
absolutely. Because like I was saying, right, build everything that you can first, make that great, and then you add on.
Dude. So there's a lot here, dude. There's a lot here. So yeah, whenever they announce this new Tomorrowland, it's going to be crazy. It's going to give us a lot of talk here on the channel for sure. But
dude, I can't wait, bro. I'm hyped.
It's gonna be fun. Mr. Webba, host of Web Shots and Webba Vision here on the channel. Everybody at home, I'll be linking the latest episodes of his shows at the end of this video, so make sure you check those out. Fantastic content. You'll really like it. So again, host of Webba Vision, which is longer form content like this, hosted by this gentleman right here. And then we also have Web Shots, which is short form content, 10, 15-minute videos on a topic. So a recent video that we did was all about going to Disneyland in the rain. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? That one will be actually released pretty soon at the time of this recording. But so Web Shots is more short form stuff. So 2 shows, great stuff. But Mr. Webba, where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Absolutely, OG. Thank you so much. And just real quick, OG, I just want to say to everybody out there, OG, this guy right here, the man with the hair, this guy has been really helping me along, bringing my ideas to life. And he's also with Webba come up with some cool concepts like the intro and everything. So this guy is freaking the man.
Well, I appreciate that, Webba. Should we show everybody your Webba one of the intros right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do
rock and roll. This is one of the intros. This is one of them. We got another one coming, but it's another one coming, like tweaked. But here's the first version of Webba. Yeah. We have that version, but the version 2 will be out very, very shortly as well. So keep an eye out for that. But I appreciate you, Webba. So we appreciate all your hard work and everything. And 2 great shows, man. And we hit the ground running. We got a lot of content coming out. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter, Mr. Webba at Webslinger760. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads, Mr. Webba at Cobweb91. You can also find me here on Orange Grove 55 here on the OG55 show, but also on Web Shots and on Webba.
There he is. Comment down below all your thoughts on the new Tomorrowland, the timeline. Do you agree with Webba and I that we're thinking by the end of the decade, 2035, we will see a new Tomorrowland? Or do you disagree? Do you think it's even further out than that? We would love to hear from you. Comment down below. We also want to hear your thoughts on Fantastic Four possibly making its way into Tomorrowland. We think it's a great idea, but do you think it's a great idea? Comment down below whether you think yay or nay on that. And we're going to end this show like we always do with the Asian Queen with 3 E's.
Thank you for watching OG55. If you aren't already, consider becoming a member today.